of the world. Oh, my people, seek the truth, avoid the evil. Learn Yahweh's ways. Torah Life Ministries.
Hello everybody, it's Paul Neeson with Torah Life Ministries, and we are doing this coming week's Torah Parashah. This coming week's Torah Parashah is number 50 in the cycle, so we only have a couple of weeks left. This coming week's Torah Parashah is Deuteronomy 26:1 to 29:8, and it's called Ki Tavo, which means when you come. Now last week's was called Ki Tzitz, which means when you go out. So last week's reading was the warning when the children left the desert, what they were to do when they went into the promised land. And this reading here is when you come, and it's their instructions of when they come into the promised land, what they are to do and how they are to do it. So it's Deuteronomy 26:1 to 29:8. And the whole point of why Yahweh chose these people and what he wanted to accomplish with them was the point of covenant. A covenant, we can call it a promise, we can call it, a bond, but a covenant is your word that you said you were going to do something and you're going to do it. And there's a covenant that we make with Yahweh when we accept Yeshua as our Messiah, that we're going to keep the words of this covenant, the words that are here in these scriptures, this contract, so to say. We're going to keep our end of the deal, and he's going to keep his end of the deal. And it says here in this week's reading what the covenant is. It says in Deuteronomy 26:16, "Today Yahweh your Elohim orders you to obey these laws and rulings. Therefore you are to observe and obey them with all your heart and all your being." Well, first of all, you're to obey them, but not just obey them. You're to obey them with all your heart and all your being. So you're not just to obey them like a robot because you have to, but your heart has to be into it. That means you have to be enthusiastic about obeying his guidelines and instructions. It goes on to read, "You are agreeing today to Yahweh your Elohim that he is your God, and you will follow his ways and observe his laws, his statutes, and his rulings, and do what he says. In turn, Yahweh is agreeing today that you are his own unique treasure, and as he promised you, that you are to observe his commands, and he will raise you high above the nations he has made, in praise, retribution, and glory. And that, as he said, you will be a holy people for Yahweh your Elohim." Again, holy is set apart. So when you agree to your end of the agreement, that you're going to follow his guidelines and instructions with a passion, with all your heart, in return, he is going to keep you set apart and make you higher above everyone else. And he gives us the warnings, the blessings, and the curses that will happen to us if we obey or disobey his guidelines and instructions. Or we're not even talking about obedience anymore, folks. We're talking about breaking the covenant. You either keep the covenant or you break the covenant. Let's put aside for a second obedience versus disobedience. Let's look at breaking a covenant and keeping a covenant. That's where the curses really come in. Keeping a covenant or not keeping a covenant. It says in here in Deuteronomy 27:10, it says, "You are to listen to what Yahweh your Elohim says and obey his commands and laws which he has given you today." So it says we are to listen and obey. And then we get into, in this week's reading, he gets into all the curses that'll happen if you do not listen. Now, some people that don't really understand scripture will say, well, why would he curse his own people? Well, if somebody doesn't follow him after making a covenant that they will, he does not consider them his people. These people, he calls them. These people do not listen to me. These people disobey me. These people do not love me. But when people follow the covenant that they made, he calls them my people. My people will be blessed. My people, my people. So these people are the disobedient covenant breakers. My people, according to him, are the covenant keepers and the obedient. So, but then he talks about the curses that are going to come upon people for breaking the covenant. In Jeremiah it says, it's a very sorrow thing for those that make a covenant with Yahweh and do not keep it. It says actually, cursed be those who make a covenant and do not keep it. Again, folks, when you accept Yeshua as your Messiah, you're acknowledging that Yeshua is Yahweh, and Yahweh has told Yeshua as a living Torah, an example of how we are to live, and he's given us the guidelines through Moses. He's given us the living example through Yeshua Messiah. So we accept Yeshua as our Messiah. Whatever you call yourselves out there, whether it's a Christian, whether it's a Messianic Jewish person, whatever you call yourself, if you accept Yeshua as Messiah, you're saying, I am going to keep this covenant with all my passion and all my heart. I'm going to study the words of these scriptures because I know this is the way to live, the way to righteousness, and the only path that I want to be on. But when you say that and don't do it, you're breaking the covenant. And that's when curses will come upon you. It says here in Deuteronomy 27:26, a curse on anyone who does not confirm the words of this Torah by putting them into practice. So the only way we can confirm or show that we agree to this covenant and not break it is by keeping it. Now, a lot of people might hear the words Torah, they might hear the words law, and they might be a little turned off. Well, how about this? When you say you're going to do something and you don't do it, you're breaking your promise. I mean, how much more simple could it be? When you do it, that's the way to prove that you meant to do it. So it says here, a curse on anyone who does not confirm the words of the Torah by putting them into practice. It's one thing to say stuff, folks, but putting it into action is a completely another thing. And we are called to put the Torah into action, just like Yeshua did, just like the disciples did, just like we're commanded to do throughout all the generations. So whatever you call yourself out there, if you're a Messianic person going to a Messianic congregation, or if you're a Christian going to a mega church, that does not excuse you from following the commands and the guidelines that our Messiah himself set, Yeshua, by living out the Torah and putting it into action. It goes on to say in Deuteronomy in 1, it says, if you listen carefully to what Yahweh your Elohim says, observing and obeying all his commands that he has given us, he will raise us high above the nations, and all the following blessings will be in abundance. So now he's going through all these blessings, and he walks through them, everything from our land to our cattle and our flocks, and to everything here, all the good things that he promised us. He said, we will be blessed in abundance. It says here in Deuteronomy 28:11, Yahweh will give you every great abundance of all good things. So basically he's saying, when we go into the land, if we make this covenant and we don't follow his words, we'll be cursed. But if we do follow his word, we will be blessed in all good things. And then we move down a little more. It says, if you listen and observe and obey the commands Yahweh has given you, and not turn away from any of the words, not the ones you choose, not the ones you pick, but not turned away from any of the words, I'm ordering you today, neither to the right nor the left, and follow after other gods and serve them. You will be blessed abundantly in all good things. But then the warning again, remember now, he's always following up his blessings with the warnings, because he knew the people and how they thought. And he wanted them to be very clear. Deuteronomy 28:15. But if you refuse to pay attention, if you refuse, a curse will come upon you. It goes on to say here in 28:20, Yahweh will send you curses, disasters, frustration, and everything you do until you are destroyed and quickly perish. You know, I'm a health teacher, and I talk about health and disease often. And part of the curses are the diseases that we were never meant to suffer from. It says in Exodus 15:26, if you diligently keep all my words, statutes, and commands, I will not put the same disease upon you that I put upon the Egyptians. But if you do not keep these words, the curses that will come upon you. And then we fast forward to this week's reading. In Deuteronomy 28:27, it says, Yahweh will strike you down with boils and that broke out on the Egyptians, tumors, skin lesions, and itching, all incurable. And you will all be struck with this insanity, blindness, and utter confusion. Well, He says in 15:26 of Exodus, if we follow his guidelines and instructions and keep his Torah, he will not put the same diseases upon us that he put upon the Egyptians. But right here he says, if you do not follow my words and commands, I will put the same disease upon you that the Egyptians suffered from. It says, all these curses will come upon you, pursuing you and overtaking you until you destroyed because you didn't pay attention to what our Creator told us to do. Because you didn't pay attention and follow and keep the covenant that you promised. Because you didn't serve Yahweh with all joy and gladness, with all your heart. Remember, if your heart's into it, your enthusiasm has to be in it. Let's go on. It says in Deuteronomy 28:58, if you will not observe and obey all the words of the Torah that are written in this book, and we all have this book, it's the scriptures, so that you will fear the glorious and awesome name, Yahweh Elohim, then Yahweh will strike you down and your descendants with plagues and give you everything the Egyptians had in terms of the disease and the sickness until you are destroyed. But if you want to make everything prosper, it says here in Deuteronomy 29:9, it says, therefore observe the words of the covenant, obey them, and you can make everything you do, you will prosper. It can't be more simple. I mean, there was a time when I didn't know Yahweh, I wasn't a believer, and I did things that I thought was good, I thought was right. Then I knew Yahweh, but I still did things that I thought was good and I thought was right. That didn't necessarily go along with his word, because his commands say do one thing, and we can make excuses for breaking the Sabbath, for not following his words. I know many good-hearted Christians out there that have accepted Yeshua as Messiah, but they're not keeping the words. They're not keeping the covenant. They don't even know what the covenant is because they're not reading it. Now, if you're doing something with all your heart, you're going to be searching things out. I mean, when you fall in love with somebody when you're a teenager or a young adult, you don't just not think about them. They're on your mind all the time, and you're thinking constantly how you could please them, make them happy. And if the information is there, you want to learn as much as possible about them. Just think about it. If you're going to get a job and the perfect job opens up and somebody hands you a piece of paper and said, this is how you get the job. Here's every single bit of thing you need to know about the company. Here's the things you need to say and do to get the job. Would you not enthusiastically, if you truly love that job and want that job, read that paper? If you fall in love with somebody as a young adult and you want to get to know them more and you want to impress them and you want to become one with them, and somebody was able to hand you a sheet of paper and said, here is every single thing you need to know about this person, what they like, what they don't like, what they love, what they hate, what they want in a person, what they want in a mate, what they don't want. If you had that information, just think about how successful you could be at accomplishing your goals. Well, our Creator wants something from us. And everything we need to know about him, of his likes and dislikes, are right here in this book, folks, in your Bible. But if you don't read it, it doesn't work. You have to read it to understand him. And it's not about starting in the middle of the book. It's about starting at the beginning of the book. That's what the Torah is. So look in there and open it up, and don't just read it once. Over and over again. We're in this Torah cycle now, and each week we go through some of these lessons. That's what our own Messiah, Yeshua, taught from himself to the people every single day. That's what he quoted when he was being tempted. This is what we need to do. The information is right here. When I plead to my brothers and sisters out there, it's one thing to go out there and take this word to people that know it and reassure it with them. But it's another thing out there to go out there and take this word to people that don't know it. And they need to know it. They need to hear it. Go out there and do that. Share this message. We're coming into the harvest season of the fall feast. Well, the harvest, there's many out there that need it. So go out there and be good gardeners. All right, everybody? If you have any comments or questions, post them below the videos. We're coming up towards the end of this year's Torah cycle. It's getting exciting, and then we're going to start all over again because it's all circular. It's not ending. We're going all through it all over again. But get ready. Let's finish out these 2 weeks, And go get some people out there and tell them about this. Tell them about Torah Life Ministries, where we do the Torah Parashahs each week, and they can get started on this coming cycle, which will start in a couple of weeks here. If you have any comments or questions, post them below this video. And until then, everybody, have a great Shabbat, and shalom, shalom.
Come out of the world, oh my people, seek the truth, avoid the evil, learn Yahweh's ways.